Hey, everybody. Welcome to our broadcast today. I'd like to thank you for coming, stopping by. Yes, I hope everybody's doing okay out there. Today, I'm really excited about our show that we're doing. This is our first Educator Summit. What we're doing today is we're featuring 4 gentlemen who are very seasoned, experienced educators around the United States, and also Gon Bops artists. And today we're going to get into the state of education and teaching as it is right now, talk about how they integrate Gon Bops into their teaching studios, and we're going to brainstorm some ideas and hopefully share some of your questions. So if you have questions for the panel, please feel free to chime in, because we love participation. And this is going live on YouTube and on our Facebook page. So after it's finished today, it archives there. Feel free to share these. We would love it if you would share these and spread the word. So let's get started. And again, thank you, everybody. So our first guest today is Tom Teasley. Tom is an artist in residence at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and has also collaborated with the National Symphony, both as a soloist and a composer, and is an educator in the Washington, D.C. area. So everybody say hi to Tom. Hey.
Hey.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Delighted to be here, Rich.
Is it cold there today?
It's actually quite nice. Yesterday was the first day I've been out for a bike ride in a while, so I think we're living in the 50s, almost 60.
Oh,
it's
beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah. It's kind of fluctuating everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, our next guest, Roland Muzquiz, is the percussion director at the Richardson High School. He also serves as the principal percussionist with the Dallas Wind Symphony and the East Texas Symphony Orchestra. He's been a teacher for a long time in the Texas area, a dear old friend of mine, and really happy to have him here. This is Roland Muzquiz, everybody. Hey.
Well,
welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be a part of this round table here.
I'm glad you're here. This is going to be a great conversation. Okay, and next, everybody, Terry Longshore. Terry is a professor of music and director of percussion studies at the Oregon Center for the Arts at Southern Oregon University, where he directs the Left Edge Percussion and is the chair and graduate coordinator of the music program. Terry has been an endorsee for many years in Ashland, Oregon. Also has participated quite often performing for PAS, and we're really glad to have Terry here. This is Terry Longshore, everybody.
Hey,
Terry, welcome.
Thanks, Rich.
Welcome.
Great to be here with you all.
I'm so glad you're here. And finally, everybody, Norm Bergeron is our newest member of the Gon Bops family. He recently joined the roster of artists. He has served as the director of percussion studies at Temple College in Temple, Texas. In addition, he maintains an active private lesson studio and home in Austin, Texas. Norm is also an active player in Austin, and we're really proud and happy to welcome him to the family. Say hi to Norm Bergeron, everybody. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great
to have you here. All right, guys. Well, welcome to the Educators Summit Roundtable. And so today we've got a series of topics that I'd like to discuss, and hopefully some people are going to chime in with some questions for you, being the experienced educators that you are and integrating Gon Bops into your world. So everybody out there who knows the history behind Gon Bops, we've been around for a very long time. The company originated in 1954. It's one of the oldest percussion manufacturers in the United States. It was actually the congas at Woodstock, and they enjoyed a lot of success for quite a while. There was a time in the 80s where they went quiet for a little while, and then they were resurrected. Now, for the past 11 years or so, Gon Bops is owned by Sabian, and So it's a big family of creators and players, and we enjoy creating new products together. And these four gentlemen are key in getting the word out to the young players of today in different regions of the country, and a very, very important part of everything that we do here in kind of propelling it to the level that it needs to go, especially with inspired new minds and great players, So I think first I want to discuss today, or just bring up, is of course, with the past year of what we've all dealt with and the struggles that we've dealt with, teaching has definitely been challenged, as is much of music, but teaching has definitely been challenged. So I want to just go around the room a little bit and hear your experience on how it's changed what you're doing, and how your percentage is now between remote versus in-studio teaching. So why don't we, I don't know, let's start with Tom.
Excuse me. Well, all of my teaching currently is remote. And part of that is due to the fact that here in the Washington, D.C. area, we're still kind of under the COVID threat a little bit. A lot of that is also due to the fact that a lot of the workshops and the teaching that I do is actually outside of the United States. I'm currently working on a project with the United States Embassy in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, for their Port-au-Prince Jazz Festival, and have created a variety of video, and I've been sharing some of that. And of course, it's all featuring Gon Bops material that I have created and put together in a hybrid kit that rather resembles a drum set. And it's been interesting to me to and prior to that, I was teaching at Beijing Language and Culture University. So it's been interesting to me to bring elements of American music, basically filtered through jazz, but being able to use the Gon Bops material to do that, and seeing how that is impacted on these different cultures. So I'd say that has it's certainly raised a lot of eyebrows and raised a lot of interest. When I was in China, I was actually in China last November and December, if you can believe that. So I beat the COVID back from China, only to get it later once I was here. But it was fascinating to still be in contact with those people. And while I was in China, I was able to leave the Gon Bops gear that I was using there. So I left a djembe, a set of bongos, and a pandeiro, and Gon Bops was nice enough to replace it. So I'm still in contact with those students, and it's interesting to see them working with the Gon Bops material and Gon Bops instruments, and using the material that I had given them. So I like to think of this, my work in general, but specifically with Gon Bops, as a merging of some traditions and ancient cultures, but finding a new way to present that material. And I'm always encouraging the students not to just do my adaptations of that, but come up with their own. So I'm very delighted that Gon Bops has been able to support that, and their reputation and influence is growing throughout the nation and the world.
And we'll get to a little bit about how you blend this stuff later, because I want to talk about that and how you create your hybrid setup formats, and because it's inspiring, and I want to talk about that a little bit. Roland, you're sitting in your studio, so how is the experience for you at this point?
Well, my my teaching, when the pandemic hit, I was doing 100% of my teaching virtually, and that was pretty much the case all the way from mid-March. Basically, we went on spring break that never ended. I mean, once we left for spring break, we just never came back to our facilities. So I had to quickly put together a virtual teaching studio at home so I could continue to work. And that was the scenario that I pretty much dealt with almost exclusively all the way until about mid-September, when we resumed school And then 3 weeks into the school year, they actually started allowing students to come back face to face. So gradually, my teaching load started shifting towards face to face, and I was fortunate enough because my studio is big enough. They allowed me to do face to face teaching, and I actually have to do. I go behind a my drum set sound shield has become my COVID shield. So
Right.
that's what I do here. But now we're my opportunity to get Gon Bops out to the public, has been, of course, working through my students here in my studio with my percussion ensembles. And then I also, one of the things that I do on a seasonal basis, I coordinate all the percussion equipment for the Texas Music Educators Association convention each year in February. And I order in all of the gear. And for years, Sabian has been a very strong supporter of TMEA. And when Sabian acquired Gon Bops, I jumped on the opportunity to get Gon Bops involved as well. I've been a Gon Bops person since I first was coming out of high school. All the percussion equipment I purchased, I still own, sitting in this room.
Yeah.
Gon Bops. And so through Sabian, of course, I was able to get Rich and a couple of his associates to help us out and provide the equipment for all the all-state jazz ensembles and some of the bands and orchestras that needed ethnic equipment. And then, of course, through my percussion ensemble here, I make sure that my curriculum always includes lots of that kind of training and exposure for the students there too. So through that, I've had kids acquire equipment. So
cool. And Norm, you're in Texas as well. So are you seeing a similar situation for yourself, or?
Yeah, so we jumped on very early to try to keep people as safe as possible. Our president went above and beyond and basically, as Roland said, shut things down right after spring break. We still haven't come back to school. We're still entirely virtual. That changes things when you're a community college percussion instructor with a studio full of gear that the students can't touch. So for me, switching the curriculum from, hey, you've got to work on 5-octave marimba and timpani, suddenly it had to be more about, hey, you need to work on snare technique because you have a pad at home. Maybe let's talk about auxiliary instrument technique because you can afford to buy a triangle or a decent tambourine. So we've definitely pushed our education here at this school much more to the auxiliary stuff, which for me has been a push my entire career. While I think it's really important that students are learning 5-octave marimba, 90% of the time that they're in a band or orchestra, they're actually playing crash cymbals or tambourine. So it's probably a good idea to spend some time having them work on that stuff.
It's interesting you say that because, my experience in studying percussion, even back when I was doing it, we all spent so much time on marimba and so much time on 4 mallet work. And then we would go into the other areas and learn. But how much marimba are we using today, in our careers? And I sad to say not that much, I wish I had a set of marimba. I don't even own one, and I wouldn't have the room for it, so, but it's so important in so many aspects, especially reading, and I kind of turned it into, well, got to work on piano then,
Yep.
Terry, what's happening in Oregon with this?
Yeah, well, much like all of you, we started off completely remote in March, and that was an interesting opportunity because I had several students who, weren't graduating yet that year and wanted to. We're on a quarter system here in Oregon, so we started a spring quarter in beginning of April, and that goes to mid-June, and so it was not like the rest of the country where it's kind of at the end of your year or something. It was a little weird for us starting a new quarter all remote. So I had several students who, either postponed recitals or didn't have one that they had to do right away. And they opted to work, kind of focus either on snare drum or actually most of them on some hand drumming things. So I had 3 students specifically who focused on both tabla and cajon during the early months of the pandemic. So we were, of course, meeting remotely, and I set up a studio here where I can, teach tabla cajon pretty easily, and I was able to loan them instruments. And so that was, I think that was a great opportunity for them to kind of take a break from the land of marimba and timpani and everything that they're so immersed in all the time, and focus on something else for a little bit. And then we've been lucky, much like Roland, since September. We start back at the end of September for the beginning of our year. And we've been able to, in certain parts of our music program, meet face-to-face. And so percussion is one of those areas. So we've been meeting for percussion lessons and percussion ensemble in person, distanced, all kinds of protocols, masking, of course, all that. But it's been really, I feel really fortunate that we've been able to, make music together, actually do live streamed concerts, and the students have access to all the instruments. So it's been great.
Yeah. What are some of the more regular, bigger challenges that you've experienced teaching remotely? And I guess I'm interested in, like, percussion and drumming is such a physical art form. So it's like, do you experience any challenges with getting the kids inspired to work on stuff and to practice when they're not in person? That's the first part of that question. The second part is, do you deal with anything like latency or anything like that when playing? Let's say you're trying to do something together, or, so anybody can take that first question.
Well, I'll let me just chime in on that. The technology was a lot of this was very new to me when I didn't know much about Zoom when all of this started. And what I did was, as a matter of fact, I avoided Zoom as long as I could. So I was teaching all of my students either FaceTime if they had Apple products, or doing Skype otherwise. And that worked okay. Both of them present their own unique challenges to deal with, but I really tried to avoid the Zoom thing as long as I could. But the one thing I learned right away was there was definitely a latency situation. So even with the students that had mallet instruments, that I was like, yes, we can play duets. That just did not work.
Right.
My understanding is there are ways to reduce or eliminate that latency situation, but you have to pretty much invest in some pretty serious technology to be able to eliminate that. And both parties have to do that.
That's right.
Spend all the money. So does the student.
Right.
So doing things like trying to play duets together just to keep them engaged and things like that was just not really an option. So we sorry about that. We had to deal with things like I had to revert to some new things that I hadn't even considered, where they are literally submitting videos of themselves playing things that I can then assess later on. So there's some really cool things. If you use Fourscore, if you're using Fourscore, you can actually actually have them seeing music. You can edit it, and they see the edits you're making. So there is definitely some wonderful technology that you can get into there. And I have to credit some of my other more tech savvy friends for turning me on to that, to be able to do that, because I really felt stranded out on an island for the first 2 or 3 months. But that really helped a lot to be able to explore those new technologies. Not just doing that, but also working with interfaces so that we can hear each other better. Which I'm using right now, and that's why I have it. And then also remote cameras and things like that. I think all of us are probably using at this point. So that's been my experience.
I think that also this is hearing what you said about the latency challenges and having to invest on both ends to make it doable. I think this is I have a feeling this is going to be something new is going to be coming out from this experience that's going to be more approachable. I hope. Because I talked to another educator that I deal with a lot, and he does a lot of remote clinics, and he's kind of gotten into that, and he works a lot of stuff with Sam Ash Music, where he does these clinics for them, and so each end has the technology now, and they're able to make it happen. But it's definitely not cheap, and it's a workaround. So I'm hoping that it'll change. Norm.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so for me, it's an accessibility issue, right? I teach at a community college with a lot of kids who don't have any spare scratch at all, right? So we have students who are coming to the school and sitting in their car in the parking lot because the Wi-Fi access is better here than at home.
Yeah.
And taking their classes sitting in the front seat of their, 2001, whatever it is they're driving.
Really?
And then have their pad, and they're, we're doing snare lessons, and they're sitting in the driver's seat with their pad.
Wow.
And I'm inside the building.
Right,
I can see them right out there, but we're not supposed to be in the same room together. So, I mean, for some of our kids, I mean, you're trying to do dial-up or, do lessons on your phone. I mean, I have students who were writing term papers on their iPhones this year because they didn't own a laptop to type on. So, in terms of lesson teaching, I mean, there's a real accessibility issue for some of our students, and it makes
a lot of kids do not have computers. A lot of them do everything on their phone. That's really. But what about outdoor teaching when the weather permits that?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, it doesn't freeze next week. And
when the weather is good. Have you seen like some teaching outside?
Yeah.
We've done some of that here. Our department actually rented a huge canopy that they put out on a lawn out in front of our building during the fall term. It got too cold in the winter, but we're looking into bringing one back for the spring, and that's been helpful. Some ensembles have rehearsed out there, some lessons have happened out there, and
right.
I wanted to comment on the other part of your question too, Rich, about motivation and students during all of this. And I found actually last March when I was fully remote that most of the students stayed pretty motivated. And, of course, we didn't have as much Zoom fatigue yet then, and just the fatigue of now almost a year of this. But I think we worked together really well on deciding, all right, we've got this 10-week term now, and we know you can't come to the building, and hopefully we were able to lend you some instruments, which we did to a lot of students, and let's make the best out of it. And what do you want to get out of this? And we set some goals, and I think they did a great job. They stayed motivated, they stayed focused for the most part. And we all know as former students and teachers that motivation comes and goes for all of us all the time, whether we're teaching face-to-face or remotely. So student motivation is a struggle even in the before times, as we like to say. So I think it's all about finding opportunities to get something accomplished and helping students identify short and longer term goals and figuring out how to get something out of the moment.
And plus, the generation we're speaking of probably is a little bit more hip to technology than we are in some regards.
Absolutely.
So they're like, oh, yeah, this is a no-brainer. But like what you just said, Norm, is interesting because we just take it for granted that there's broadband Wi-Fi everywhere, and that's not the case.
That's right.
Still,
That's
which
right.
is
One thing that came on my radar, working with the students in Haiti, of course.
Oh yeah.
Their internet is the worst of what could be you could possibly imagine. So a workaround that I did for them that I'm implementing in my own studio is I recorded a series of play along videos, not just audio but video as well. And then in Haiti, they have the embassy to help them do that. But they're videoing them playing along with the video that I created. So usually when I do the State Department trips, I'm there, and that's part of the magic of this thing is we're interacting live with the different cultures. But it's been pretty good. And the other thing I'd like to point out that I think has been touched on is I think when we look back in 5 years, 10 years, where the technology has been, I think this time is going to be a pivotal moment. And and I actually am also believing that it's going to possibly manifest as a time of empowerment for artists, because this takes us a little away from the education thing specifically, but this is something I'm passing on to my students. Is that they are now they have the possibility of being the venue, controlling the content. It's pretty amazing actually if you can look past all of the negative aspects of what's been going on and look at the potential possibilities of it. So
Yeah, I totally agree. I firmly believe that there's, through all of this crazy, dark stuff that we've experienced, there are some really good, interesting changes, and focus is changing in some regards, like you said, for the better. So I'm also seeing on my end too that, professional players that I deal with all the time are waking up to the fact that, oh man, I really got to work on my own thing. I got to work on writing. I have to work on, I got to work on my business stuff. I got to work on my social media thing. I got to become my own business manager. I've got to, these changes are good, and I'm seeing some players becoming more well-rounded from this, I mean, we all miss being around each other and interacting. That hopefully is coming back soon, but yeah. So
I've for the past 10 years or so, I've had kind of a very unusual career as a solo percussionist. So, with a variety of elements, but this has, I was almost 50% there, because I was already using some technology, and I was like Roland, I was teaching on Skype. So I had this kind of remote thing happening. And once I kind of woke myself up from the nightmare in March, and started to begin to pull myself together, and I just started putting stuff out there. I actually have found, as ironic as it sounds, that I'm busier than I was pre-COVID.
wow.
So
Wow.
it's pretty amazing.
Are any of you seeing any live gig stuff happening in your area yet? Whether it's a cafe or whatever?
Yeah, here in Southern Oregon, a lot of the wineries have had live musicians.
Right.
One of the flamenco guitarists who I play with a lot, he's been doing a ton of solo winery gigs, and actually guitar duo gigs with another guitarist. And so they, it's all outdoors, and a lot of the venues have been providing cover and heaters and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's been a fair amount of outdoor live, smaller, venue kind of music stuff.
Okay, that's encouraging.
It's coming back. I just got booked for some things in the summer. So until March, I haven't done a live gig since it stopped. Live in person.
It's certainly coming back in Austin, but the city of Austin has sort of, or let me rephrase that, the buyers in Austin have used it as a way to lowball the artists.
Right.
We're not making as much money as we used to. We can't afford to pay the band, so you can come play some jazz, but
we don't have any money for you.
Exactly. So
yeah, that's an age-old problem, isn't it? Yeah.
We had a really amazing thing happen here with a local group called the Ashland Folk Collective, and back in the summer, they sponsored some outdoor mobile concerts where they had folk ensembles up to like 5 people, 2 to 5 people in the little small flatbed trailer being pulled by a solar powered Volkswagen bus and moving around, and they would stop for no more than 15 minutes. They'd like play 2 songs and then they'd move to another location so that it didn't encourage too much congregating of people in one place for too long. And they raised money. They did fundraisers, and they paid all the musicians a living wage, and it was really fantastic.
Wow.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Roland, orchestrally, it's really taken a bite out of it, obviously.
Yes, I mean,
so many people in a room or whatever, but what's the buzz there with that?
Well, here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, both of the major symphony orchestras, both the Dallas Symphony Orchestra and Fort Worth, both pretty much shut down for a while. They are both. I'm not so sure about Fort Worth, but I know that Dallas is now doing some things. But of course, they're doing more chamber works, things that are more spread out, and of course, they're having to spend an inordinate amount of money on testing. Testing, doing COVID testing. Right. Little by little, the Dallas Winds, we were able to do a Christmas program, and of course that involved, we had to go to the hall the day before and all get tested, and we did it with a smaller group, a smaller program, a shorter program. And, you know, every aspect of it, you know, even just going backstage and everything had to be monitored, you know, in the interest of COVID protocols. And things are sort of starting to come back. I just received an email yesterday. The Dallas Winds, we are going to play our March and our April subscription concert. But I mean, we've been out since a year ago. Since a year ago. The same thing with the East Texas Symphony. I was supposed to do a concerto next month, so they have now announced that they're going to move all of this season's programming next season. So it'll be a year from next month when I finally get to do the concerto. But you know, just all the freelance work had just dried up. I mean, it was just gone. I mean, I didn't play a job. I didn't play a job from the end of February till December.
It's hard to understand or accept the fact that so many of these organizations just might not survive it and might not be able to come back. And, you know, then hopefully donations are helping, and however they're doing it. I don't know how these orchestras are doing this. I mean, in Los Angeles, the film orchestras, for example, have broken it down to where they do sections, you know, and they spread out the sections, and they'll, okay, today we're doing clarinets, you know, or whatever, and they'll do it that way. Because they can piece it together with a recording, but yeah.
I'm curious to imagine what it's going to be like when we're on the other side of this from the buyer's perspective. Are they going to be? Oh, we just can't wait to go see everything live that we possibly can, or is there still going to be kind of this reticence in place, or are they going to be? Well, you know, we're used to viewing things virtually now. It's a big question mark to me in terms of like what are the consumers of music and art in general? How are they going to feel once this is over?
It's interesting because from my side of things in combo playing and playing in popular music and talking to my colleagues, I hear all kinds of mixed things about the fall tour coming up or whatever. And I also think that music industry, especially in the rock and roll thing, they kind of look at the NFL as a gauge a little bit. And if you have the Super Bowl putting 25,000 seats in there, I know the wheels are turning on how they can make this happen. I spoke to the drummer for Roger Waters yesterday, and he said that they're discussing doing a show in a outdoor stadium, but arena size crowd to spread everything out. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this comes to play after NFL doing what they did, you know, because if they pulled that off, I haven't heard any stats actually after the Super Bowl, if it was a spreader or not. I don't know if you guys have, but I haven't heard anything about that being a problem. So I don't know. We'll see, you know, but I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing, you know, by what everybody is saying today here. There are trickles, and the trickles are getting bigger, you know. So Terry, I want to go back to you about I want to start talking a little bit about Gon Bops instruments in your teaching, and specifically cajones with you, because you mentioned flamenco, and you do a lot of this work. So let's talk a little bit about the cajon playing that you do and teach, and the styles versus, you know, Peruvian versus flamenco, and how you incorporate Gon Bops.
Yeah, well, I use cajon as a great kind of gateway instrument into hand drumming. It's, you know, it's so simple to play, to get started on at least, and it shares some of its techniques with other drums, which is great. And you know, I introduce when people are interested in cajon, I usually at least once a year try to do a kind of introduction to the rhythms and music of flamenco kind of workshop with all my students, and then playing techniques of the cajon through that. And then those of them that get really interested in it, we can kind of delve off from there. And, you know, the cool thing about the Gon Bops range of cajons, which, you know, is kind of embarrassing. I think I have 4 of them or 5 of them, or between the school and me, maybe 6 or 7 Gon Bops cajons around. They all sound different. Even, you know, I mean, the model, they're pretty consistent, the same model, but each one has its own identity, and I love that. And we talk about Peruvian versus Spanish-Style Cajons, and some of the rhythmic differences. And it's a great introduction to hand drumming instrument, I think. And You know, the world of flamenco gets pretty deep pretty fast, but the cajon can travel, you know, to so many different kinds of music really easily. In fact, I'm playing. We have a funny little live gig tonight where we're going to play at a retirement home up north of us, and we're playing on the stage of their community center, but no one will be in there with us, and they're live streaming us to the residents' rooms.
Wow.
So I'll be playing cajon along with one of my students who's playing this groovy marimba solo. And you know, it's just it blends so well with so many different kinds of music. So it's just a fantastic instrument that they tend to get really excited about.
Do you find your students gravitate more towards a drum that has the strings or without the strings? Because it seems like more in development these days with making cajons across the board, not just Gon Bops, but other companies, is that there's more of a collection of the ones with snares as opposed to without. Do you find?
Yeah, I think they gravitate towards that more because it can emulate the sound of the drum set a little more closely, I guess, with that snare sound, you know?
Mhm.
Right.
And I mean, I've got the non-snare Alex Acuna model right behind me here. And I love that drum. I have both of, you know, the snare one and the non-snare, but the one without the snares has such a beautiful tone and roundness to it, you know? And
Yeah.
yeah.
That drum, the Peruvian style Acuna cajon is, even though it does not have snares, the way they develop the upper corners of it with the slap, you can almost simulate that kind of thing, you know, the separation between bass and snare kind of thing. It's pretty cool. And that particular drum and the special edition have just outstanding bass tones, you know. And then, you know, some of our other cajons, there's a little bit more blend between the snare and the bass. You hear more of the snares across the face, you know. It just depends, you know. Norm, I know you just kind of got into the family, but you know the instruments. I mean,
Yeah.
What are you kind of using lately?
Well, I mean, as I was saying earlier, this idea of getting into the auxiliary stuff, but I've been teaching Brazilian samba schools all over the place for a really long time, and for me, if you can't get the shaker to swing, right, you're lost. And so, you know, Danny Reyes's shakers are just so dark and beautiful, and the weight of them feels so good in terms of getting that slosh to get the swing and the accent pattern. So you know, that's the Brazilian side. And then for me, the other side is working on maraca technique, right? Like, because I mean, I've had the chance to travel to Cuba and study with, you know, some of the monsters in Santiago, and man, it's its own world, right? So, but the Gon Bops maracas, like I brought back some beautiful handmade maracas from Santiago, and everybody that touches them, oh, these are the finest things ever. And I did a recording the other day and A/B'd them with the Gon Bops maracas, and it's the same exact sound. I mean, even in the same pitch range, they're just as dark.
Are you talking about the plastic or the
rawhide? Yeah, for sure.
You know, speaking of maracas, it's one of the things that I've discussed with the team over the years often, because I'm really interested and really would love to have a set of Gon Bops traditional, like Venezuelan style maracas. Because Luisito Quintero has had a few people that he's brought to the NAMM show a couple of times, and I actually have a set of the ones that they made as kind of a teaser for us. So I've been trying to get us in that direction. I'm going to continue to work on it, because I have to say, the art of playing the maraca correctly like that, I'll never forget. A long time ago, I don't remember which PIS it was, there was a woman from Venezuela that came and performed, and I and everybody else that was standing next to me, our jaws just dropped, because we were just, are you kidding me? You know, it's an amazing instrument when played like that, played correctly. The technique behind it, it's so interesting and fantastic. So I hope we'll eventually have some traditional maracas here.
Cool.
I'm kind of putting the bug out, you know.
That's cool.
That would be cool.
Roland, in your studio, I know you have the Mariano series, right?
I have a set of the California series congas,
Right.
and bongo, the matching bongos, and then I have a set of the vilato, the shallow timbales.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that is what I kind of focus on teaching my kids. I try to always incorporate something of the Afro-Cuban variety, either more dance style and even some rumba things. So I like to also introduce the rumba things and use a cajon so they understand the function of the cajon in a rumba setting.
Right.
So I've used a variety of those. But the congas, the tumbadoras, the bongos, and the timbales are what I use primarily in my presentations. I have a couple of camps that I teach. I do an Afro-Cuban unit for half of the camp, and then I do a Brazilian unit for the other half of the camp. And so those are the instruments that I always try to present, and let the students hear what kind of quality we're dealing with here. They're fantastic sounding instruments. So that's, again, I'm right now, we're in sort of what we consider percussion ensemble season. So right now is where I'm programming things that utilize a lot of those techniques. I'm teaching a lot of those techniques to the students. So they, to me, these are the things that, like as a couple of other guys reflected on earlier, once you graduate and you're gone and you're out there trying to work and hustle some gigs, that 5-octave experience may not land you a whole lot of gigs, but if you've got some hand drumming chops in your back pocket, there's a lot more opportunity. So I like to make sure that by the time they graduate from my program and they move on to other things, that they've got some things that'll last them a lifetime. Some skills that they can hang on to and utilize, and especially if they're going on to music programs in colleges and universities and stuff like that. So
it's interesting, the whole marimba thing, again, getting back to that because you just mentioned it, but I've often thought, and I'm not I don't understand why it doesn't happen more often, and maybe it does and I just don't know. But when percussion instructors are teaching marimba and they focus so heavily on trying to get that thing going with their students, why they don't integrate that with an equal amount of piano playing and teaching, because it's much more obviously useful when you're out in the real world and being able to write and read. And if you're doing all of that mallet keyboard stuff anyway, right? If they said, well, we're going to spend this much time on piano as well, and you have a piano teacher, and that's part of the curriculum, do you ever see that happening where it's integrated in? And
yeah, at our school, all the students, regardless, even the pianists, have to take a full year of piano skills training.
I don't know how common that is, though. I wonder in other schools.
Pretty common at most universities in music programs.
Okay. It wasn't when I was in school in the 70s. It was not, it was never discussed, but, I really wish it was, But now, Tom, you, regarding the instruments that you use, you've done some really interesting things with integration and taken the whole Gon Bops thing and really ran with it with regards to hybrid setup. I'll just kind of, there's everybody, I just posted on our Facebook page recently, you'll see it there, a video of Tom playing this Gon Bops hybrid setup where he is integrating looping and electronics with the hybrid setup. And what he does is he has a Orestes Vilato timbale, the 15-inch, as a bass drum, put spurs on it. Then he has the djembe in the snare drum position. He has bongos in the tom position. He has a pandero in the floor tom position. Then he has the 8-inch timbale snare to the left. So I encourage you to go check out this video because it's really inventive and cool. And then he does looping with it. But talk a little bit about your Gon Bops arsenal and how you utilize it.
Well, it's been interesting hearing the backgrounds of some of the other guys here. The way I came to the world percussion thing is a little differently. I went to music conservatory, went to Peabody, and then I got out of school, and while the rest of my colleagues were taking orchestral auditions, I was playing in a blues band in New Orleans. And I just, of course, New Orleans is the melting pot of everything, right? Filtered through Americana. And so that was the thing that said, oh, there's more. And so I started seeking out master drummers from Africa and India and the Middle East. And I was trying to find a way to collate all this information in a way that I could remember it and practice it. And I was always looking for an integrative way where a technique on one instrument could be applied to another. So, and also during that time, I was studying drum set with Joe Morello. So it wasn't that much of a stretch for me to start putting the djembe in front of me and with my left hand playing it with a brush. And then I say, oh, I wonder what it would be like if I took some of those Ted Reed exercises or Alan Dawson type things and put my right hand on a ride cymbal. And I said, well, I need something now for my foot to do. So it started off where I had the drum set and I was gradually replacing little pieces of the drum set with another kind of instrument until now the drum set's sitting over in the other corner of the room. And all of these elements are my Gon Bops hybrid kit. And what I really like about it is that it has enabled me to, and this is what I'm also encouraging all my students to do, but it's enabled me to create a unique sound and vibe. I mean, good, bad, or indifferent. You know, I'm have always been interested in finding that thing that does not exist, probably to the instead of trying to perfect the one thing that does exist. And you know, on education, I'm now teaching a lot of it's my time in the semester to teach music ed students. So normally, you know, for the percussion methods class. So normally during this time, it would be something where we'd be doing a little marimba, a little triangle and everything. But I got everybody one of these small Mariano djembes, and we're working on that. And the handwriting on the wall, it's already there, that as many music programs are going under, with the exception of Roland over there, and high schools and public schools, a lot of band programs are being placed with after school programs, which are frequently drumming programs. So I like this, to be able to filter this on to the students, because I feel it's a real tangible, real world skill that they can develop and use to make money.
Yeah.
If I can jump in on that, before I came back to Texas to teach at the community college level, I was a high school percussion guy like Roland in rural Maine, 3 towns feeding 1 high school. We still only had 200 kids in the high school, but we had over 100 of them in the band because we only did percussion because there had been no music program. So how are you going to teach them how to read and learn an instrument all in high school? Well, you're not. So you start a samba school, right? And you get a bunch of gear and you play the football game halftime show as a Brazilian samba school in rural Maine. And it worked. It was an incredible experience.
Lunchtime.
Yeah.
Well, you're hearing, everybody, if you haven't already figured that out, Roland is actually at a school. So we're hearing the school bell.
That's great.
I'm in my studio at the school.
Yeah. So, you know, that's what we're hearing there. Question for all of you again. I mean, how can we as teachers better promote Latin and Afro-Cuban percussion in schools, as far as the literature for middle and high school? Is it access to better equipment? And also, what's your favorite resource for this style of music? Maybe you can recommend one of your favorite books that so other teachers might know what you use for teaching this kind of stuff. And then you might also have like a favorite video you could recommend. We're curious about that.
Well, I have amassed a fairly large library of things that I just, because, you know, I was just information hungry myself when I was really getting into this coming out of college. I was fortunate enough to get a chance to spend some time with Frank Malabé when I was still at Eastman. And he's the one that kind of really fueled the fire for me. I mean, it was sort of I guess a look into the future, because Frank and I would do lessons over the phone. back in the 80s. He came and did a residency at Eastman when I was there, because one of my classmates had been studying with him. One of my classmates was from the New York City area, and so he was going to Sunnyside, Queens to the Boys Harbor School and taking lessons with Frank there. And so Frank came and did a residency at Eastman, and that's when I connected with him. And then as soon as when I left Rochester, moved back to Texas, I did my best to maintain a line of education with Frank, and so got a chance to study with him. And I brought him to Texas a couple of times to do some PAS, sponsored events. But it was really cool to get a chance to work with him, and then also I was able to also score a few opportunities to spend some time with Luis Conte. So that kind of fueled, what I was doing. And then, between those two influences, I was also filling in a lot of blanks by buying every book, every recording, every video that I could get my hand on. So I have a huge library, and I have put together, I have some handouts. I put together one little reference list with a number of books, videos, and things like that I'd be happy to share. I haven't updated in probably a couple of years, but it probably has a lot of the more standard stuff. And being that the majority of what I did when I moved to the Dallas area was drum set work, more so than orchestral work and that sort of thing. And then I hooked up with a Latin band. I was constantly learning the role of expanding the drum set and including more and more percussion, into the drum set. So, that's been one of my things, is learning to incorporate other things, just like Walfredo Sr. does. And like I saw Alex do. I mean, I was able to bring Alex to Texas also when I was state chapter president for Texas a few years back, and watching what they did. And so that's been like a constant passion of mine, is to incorporate more percussion stuff into the realm of doing the drum set, and in some cases doing a little bit like he was talking about a while ago, about eventually replacing some of the components of the drum set with real Gon Bops instruments and things like that. So, but the resources, there's just a number of things out there. I mean, the Frank Malaby's book, which of course came out around that time, and then the Duca de Fonseca put out a book also that was Brazilian related, and I've had a chance to meet him also. So I mean, there's lots of material out. There's a lot of of every medium, video, and of course now with YouTube, I mean, it's right. You don't have to really spend that money anymore. So
yeah.
I also was a student of Frank Malaby. Unfortunately, he passed, while I was getting into it. But it was an interesting journey for me, because I was sorry.
I promise you that's the last one.
No worries. I was in the Navy band at the time in Washington, and so I would drive up to New York, and I would do a lesson with Joe Morello, and then I'd go do a lesson with Frank Malaby, and then another one with Dave Samuels. But it was interesting doing a session with Morello and Malaby back to back, because I found, and it might have almost been the beginning of my merging a lot of these things, but I started taking some of Malaby's concepts and pulling out the Ted Reed book, that I was using with Joe, and finding different ways to apply them. And then I wrote a book that's published by Alfred called An American Approach to World Percussion, that is basically that combination of the Alan Dawson method, but applied to a variety of world percussion techniques. So, and the only other thing I'll add to that is I really think it's important to embrace wherever it is that you come from. And again, this is what I'm always encouraging my students. So embracing your passion, embracing your history, your musical history and your non-musical history, and trying to find that point where, maybe it's not that traditional, but it's a reflection of A, at least honoring a tradition, and B, trying to expand the boundaries of what is currently in existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you guys, Norm and Terry, as far as resources that you find you gravitate towards to teach Afro-Cuban and Latin
I think like Roland, my file cabinet is full. The
Right.
shelves behind me are full, and over the years, my book isn't published, but I've put a thing together that I use with my students all the time. That's very similar to what Tom has in terms of using the sort of the syncopation approach to all the other instruments. But for me, again, getting back to the accessibility thing I brought up earlier with internet, for me, nothing wrong with the old dead white guys. They were really good at what they did, but I've been that guy that's been pushing since the day I got hired to teach in Maine to make sure that the other is spoken about and that they're learned about, and bringing the black and brown into the classroom, I think, is, as a white guy, but I think it's really, really, really important to make sure that music is talked about, because let's face it, like the American musical experience doesn't exist without it, right? The funk and the groove and the swing, it all comes from there. So we better talk about it, right? So
well, foundationally, too, with regards to the YouTube generation and everything, it's an amazing resource. Of course, be able to go on a format like that and find anything that you want to watch and learn.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm not sure, and this is a question for all of you, I'm not sure how much of the students are going more for the flash when they're looking at YouTube and looking for videos, or do they dig into the foundation and to the originators of the instruments? Because I had this discussion with Ilya Lazo from Cuba, and it was the same call I was on with him and with Orestes Vilato, the two different generations. And Ilya Lazo, who's, I would say he's probably in his 30s, I think, at this point, but he did dig way deep into the godfathers of conga, and he went back and found the guys that really crafted the art of it from Cuba, and learned his foundation. Do you find that's a challenge with students to get them to, pay attention to the history, or do you have to push it, or do they have the interest?
I think it varies from student to student a lot. I have some students who need a nudge, need to kind of be shown, where to look for things, and that's a big responsibility to remember to do that. And then I have other students who are just always digging and always looking. So it's finding that balance of being able to work with them collectively and keep everyone inspired and energized, and then also to remember that they're all individuals and figure out what each one needs, to help them develop the best way.
Yeah. I would say from like the drum set perspective, right? Everybody wants to have the chops, right? And so I think the kids are watching a lot of chops videos, but it's the person who can play in the pocket who's actually going to get the gig on Friday night. So I know for me, when I have that student who really wants to dig in and you hip them to Zigaboo and they're like, oh yeah, that's it. Right. And like, those are those really exciting, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like those are the really exciting teaching moments when that kid is like, no, it is about the pocket. It's not about the flashy fill or.
Yeah. Did you guys ever have, host Indugu Chancellor at your school for a clinic?
Yeah.
So there we go. We're talking about, he did a great clinic with this topic, and it was very fun, with regards to how you're going to make your livelihood, because he did all that. He did all the chops. He played with Weather Report, right? But then he'll talk about working with Quincy Jones on a Michael Jackson hit, and it's just kick, snare, hat. That's all that was allowed in the room. And he talked about, that, and okay. Is it going to make you dance, right? So do you guys feel go ahead, Terry.
I was just going to say, I wonder if you all have experienced this too. Over my career, I've seen a real shift from like when I was a student, the people I went to school with and all that, we tended to come with a strong drum set background and not as much in the way of mallet keyboards and timpani and orchestral kind of stuff. And that has really changed. Now I find that I have way fewer students who come with much drum set experience and come with a lot of concert percussion experience, but much less grooving, playing drums, playing percussion, that kind of stuff. I'm wondering if you see that in your worlds as well.
I don't see it. I teach the only consistent university job I'm teaching at is University of District of Columbia, which is probably like City College in New York. So these kids are coming and they've been playing in their church since they were 4 years old. So they you don't have to talk to them about groove.
Yeah.
And they're such a delight to teach because it's all musical vocabulary. So whenever you say, oh, this is a dotted 8/16, oh, that's what you call it. And it's interesting. I when I travel and I'm doing workshops, like I was in Korea not too long ago, and it was a very different situation there because these people were playing all this impossible mallet music that I would not even attempt, and the concept of playing like a shaker pattern in 4/4 time and making it groove or swing, it wasn't really on the menu yet for them. So I'd venture to say that it's kind of the geographic demographic of where where the student is coming from that largely influences that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'd say where Roland and I are in Texas, the Texas Music Educators Association and PAS pushing that bar higher and higher all the time for all state percussionists and all of the drum lines here. When I go out and do clinics, they're bringing me in to bring the groove in, right? They're bringing me in to let's do a Brazilian thing or let's do a Cuban thing, because none of their kids necessarily are drum set players. There was a time when I would go work with the Marcus High School kids and there'd be 4 or 5 smoking drum set players in Ken and Wiley's program. And now you go and ask, like, who's your drum set kid? Oh, I don't have a drum set kid anymore. Like the kids just don't want to do that. They want to learn Keiko Abe or, whoever, which is great. I mean, that's really cool, but like, where's the groove?
Right. Roland, and for everybody, but Roland is teaching in high school. As far as literature, back to that question of literature, do you find that there's adequate literature for middle and high school with regards to Afro-Cuban and Latin percussion? Because I think in college level, it seems like it might be a little bit different, but I mean, do you find that there's adequate amount of literature to pick from?
Well, I will say this. I don't know if I'd be qualified to say that there's adequate amount, but I think there is an ample amount of literature available, especially in the percussion ensemble realm, to get kids involved with. I have several little mountains of, here's my Afro-Cuban pile, here's my Brazilian pile, and so forth. Here's my island grooves.
Right.
People who are into the
Junkanoo,
steel and stuff like that.
Right.
But I have found there to be an ever expanding library of that kind of stuff. And some of the stuff, especially the farther you go back, you find stuff that's written a little bit. How should I put it? A little more. The parts are a little more elementary or whatever. So obviously, I'm always taking the liberty of doctoring them up a little bit to make them a little more contemporary. But you have to give credit to the guys who were writing stuff like that 30 years ago.
Sure.
It's like, hey, I thank God somebody wrote something like this. But this conga part obviously is just bare bones what it could be. So I don't hesitate to doctor those things and make it to where the kids can really sink their teeth into and have a little more fun with it.
Yeah.
But I'd say, I mean, there's from the Afro-Cuban standpoint, there's a fair number of things out there. Brazilian, I would say probably an equal amount. Norm can probably attest to that, but there's always room for more. That's for sure.
Do you see a good amount of new literature coming out? I mean, new inventive composers, or is there room for that?
Well, I will say this. I work with my percussionists here within their wind ensembles and so forth, and I would say that more and more composers are starting to become more ethnic percussion savvy and right into I play in the Dallas Winds. We play a lot of literature written by John Mackey. He does not hesitate to write anything.
Right.
I played a musical about 3 or 4 years ago, and the writers were I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name who was involved with Hamilton, and I can't think of his name right now, but they were literally writing the show. It was a show called Fly, and it was supposed to be Broadway bound, but they were kind of field testing it here, and they were literally writing the music. And myself and one of my peers here, Drew Lang, were hired to play percussion on it. And the composer kept coming to me daily and say, "What else do you have? Show me." And I finally said, "Hey, can I just come to your studio?" So he came here and just kind of looked around. He's like, "What's that? What does it sound like? How do you notate that? What is this? How do you notate that?" And then the next day I'd walk in and we'd have a new chart, and he would have written something for, for African talking drum, or, and so we ended up having just half of the pit was ethnic percussion equipment. So, it just kind of expands like that. So a lot of composers are writing not only for professional groups like Dallas Winds, but a lot of high schools and even middle schools, incorporating a lot of things using Middle Eastern drums, doumbek, darbukas, and things like that too. So yeah, it is expanding. So the kids at the junior high level, and especially at the high school level, are getting more and more exposure to that stuff. And I'm pushing that with my clinics and presentations and at the camps that we do here. And to me, I feel like that's a bonus that I offer here that maybe some of the other campuses don't. It's like, hey, we've got this too. I mean, like Norm, I have an entire. I mean, I could outfit about a 40-piece Brazilian ensemble here easily with the equipment I have, and that's all been just my own personal investment. It doesn't belong to the school; it belongs to me.
Right.
I keep it here; it's housed here, and we use it. And same thing with the Afro-Cuban equipment. Same thing so that the kids get that exposure.
How do you all feel about how you as teachers and we as the manufacturer can better promote these kinds of products to the students and to future students?
Well, I'll just kind of follow up on what we were talking a little bit before the show, where I'm seeing a lot more of hobbyists. So it's not just kids too. It's retired people, who are interested in developing some skills. So I think that like this. The Mariano djembe, I'm actually I have the 12 and the 10, and I'm sort of liking the 10 more because I can play it sort of like an Iranian tombak, and it suits me. But it's super light, and I'm seeing lots and lots of people using this, like maybe 20, 30 years ago, people would pick up the guitar for, as a hobby. So I think that's a big demographic that should be explored, because I'm finding it that it's very real.
Yeah.
Roland, I wanted to follow up on just one thing, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but when you were talking about taking a piece of music that was written a while ago and then doctoring it up, I think those kids are like super, super lucky to have you, because that's like the real world skill. Because how many times do you see in your professional life, do you get a score where you're doctoring it up? So
Right.
so having passing that information on to students, very, very powerful. I just want to make sure that I express that to you.
I don't make any bones about expressing to the students, I'm changing this because we're going to make it more authentic. And they kind of dig that angle. Like, yeah, I said, what's written here is very academic. We're going to make this more authentic, and it's still going to work. It's still going to work, and that's why it works, and that's why they really sink their teeth into it, because it's a little more interesting for them.
Yeah. I wanted to ask Norman, and I think Roland can chime in. All of you can chime in on this, but I'm just curious. The challenge of teaching Brazilian percussion, specifically the feel, the lope, to us white folk, and I'll never forget. I went to a clinic once with Alex Acuna, and he talked about he had a really interesting way to describe it. He says, if you take a ball and you roll it down a hill, those are 16th notes in Western music. But if you take an egg and roll it down a hill, that's
Yep.
a Brazilian thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've often used something similar, a gerbil in one of those little exercise wheels, right? When they get just to that right speed where the wheel is not going perfectly, exactly the same RPMs. I use that a lot. And it depends on the kids. If I'm teaching a room full of like super nerds at a magnet high school,
right.
then I break out the whiteboard and we start talking about math, right? So the 4/16 notes being 25% of the whole, and triplets being 33 1/3, and how in Brazilian samba we're taking those 4 notes and we're keeping the 2 in the middle or closer together, right? So we start talking about percentages and it gets really nerdy. And then for some of the kids, like, whoa, that totally makes sense. But again, for me, like if you can get them to have a shaker in their hand and really feel that to and fro accent and let the 2 middle notes slosh closer together, you can get a room full of kids swinging pretty hard pretty quickly with a room full of shakers if you're willing to take the time to do it.
That's an interesting aspect of it too, with shakers and teaching that feel. Yeah.
Well, especially it's chicken or the egg, right? With samba feel, like when you're playing tamborim, is it the flip that creates the lope?
Right.
Right, because trying to play tut tut ti ti tut tut totally straight is hard, and playing straight 16th notes on a shaker is really hard.
Right.
But just playing the accent pattern, it wants to swing, right? So that's part of it. I mean, if you've got a room full of kids that have been trained really well, they're great classical percussionists, trying to get them to lope is really hard. But if you had a room full of Tom's kids from Tom's school who grew up in church playing stuff that feels really good and swings, they're going to get the swing immediately. They're going to figure out how to make that instrument do the right thing, right? So
one of the obstacles that a lot of that I as a teacher have to deal with is, here in Texas, this is drum and bugle corps, hard drum and bugle corps country. So everybody's into just like the most absolute, like Norm was saying, things being absolutely metronomically divided to the nth degree.
Right.
So to me, the approach I take is that when I start talking about this to them, especially with Brazilian stuff, but this is also the case, especially when you're talking about rumba, Afro-Cuban rumba, is, you're not going to learn it from a book. You have to live the culture. You have to listen to the music, listen to recordings. Yes, you can look at the book, but you have to listen to the recordings. You need to watch the videos. You need to go out and experience it. Go out and live the culture. Eat the food. Wear the clothes. You need to live that culture a little bit to start absorbing it. I remember, Frank Malabe just telling me, getting a good slap. He goes, it'd probably take you about 15 years. I remember just thinking, oh my God. 15 years. I've got to invest 15 years to get a decent slap. And it's like, yeah, okay. But, as you immerse yourself in the culture, it starts making more sense to you. And like I said, to me, it's all about, what I preach to the kids is you have to live that culture a little bit, from all different angles, the food, the music,
right,
the dance. And that's so important for them to understand that everything we're doing is interrelated with dance. And then it starts, then the big picture really starts making itself clear. And then they understand. That this has to be treated differently.
And just to bring up the Gon Bops Pandero, because teaching Pandero and learning Pandero first of all, it's hard just to begin with, because we're talking about the technique and that feel, but also the weight of the instrument and getting your arm and your muscles used to that new thing, right? So I think that what Gon Bops did successfully with our Pandero is the weight. It's a lightweight, good sounding, really nice sounding Pandero. Don't you agree, Norm? I know we've talked about this.
Absolutely. Yeah, the first Pandero I bought, I think, was at a Percussive Art Society conference when I was a student at UNT. And it was from like I don't remember what import company, but it was a rosewood 14-inch Pandero. Thing weighed, I don't know, 75 pounds. It was it was ridiculous. And I'm 6'6". You know, I'm not a small guy.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, I mean, I couldn't even hold it up, let alone play a pattern on it, you know. And over the years, trying to find lighter and lighter and you know, quality drums, and I was getting stuff from Brazil, like the contemporaneous stuff. But man, the Gon Bops thing is like, it's like a pillow. It's just, it's great.
It's pretty nice. I know. I am very happy with the way that turned out weight-wise. And I mean, I have a Contemporanea Pandero that, you know, that I had prior to us developing this, and it was difficult for me to hold on to it. And, you know, I had to hold my arm a little bit lower. Guys, we have a question from one of our customers here. I'd like to bring it up on the screen. Let's discuss this, okay? This is from Grant Weiss. Do you as educators take a role in teaching respect for culture in the process of teaching their rhythms? And if so, how? Does it help inform the student's groove? Do you see that question, guys?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Ron.
No, Terry, after you.
I was going to say absolutely that I think teaching, you know, like we've already been saying, you know, learning about the culture, the food, the dance, everything as part of it is so important. And the thing I wanted to add to that is the language. The language is important. And both the language of the culture, somewhat the names of the rhythms, the names of the instruments, and how to pronounce those things, learning a little bit about that. But I find in a lot of this music that the rhythms themselves relate so strongly to the language. And of course, I come from a long study of the music of India, and we have a highly developed, you know, syllabic way to express all the rhythms and things. But in all musics, I think it can be so important. And you were making me think of when you're talking about Brazilian samba, which I am by no means an expert in. I have a great friend who's a fantastic teacher and player of Brazilian and African music, Brian Rice, who lives in Oakland, California. And the way he described that rhythm was using language, and he uses the syllables karakasha, 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 and that's the sound of the shaker, right? And just being able to say that, if you can say karakasha, karakasha, you can probably be well on your way to making that shaker have that rhythm, or play that on the kaisha or whatever. So really integrating language with the study of the instrument, learning about the culture, where it comes from, why this particular thing is important, where it fits in the musical or the daily culture, I think is super, super important.
Terry, you just brought up exactly something I was going to bring up earlier, which is verbalization and using words to learn rhythm, because it's such a key thing and it's such a useful thing. And you just said it. So thanks for bringing that up, because it's helped so much. But I also, with regards to dance, you know, and regards to the different styles of Latin music, the ability to understand the dance behind it seems so crucial. Do you see, because I see it in a school here in Southern California, called Cal Arts, that integrates dance teaching with the percussion students and learning the different types of dance that might go with Cuban music, or might go with you know, Venezuelan, or might go with Brazilian, and learning some dance steps and learning a little bit how to move your body. Do you see that happening in your worlds at all?
Absolutely. So to get to Grant's question and your comment at the same time, I think sometimes when I'm brought in to be a clinician for Brazilian music, the head band director gets a little sideways when I spend 20 to 30 minutes talking about the favelas and the people that actually make this music, instead of talking about rhythms. But I think you can't separate the two. So there's that part. And the same is true with dance. I mean, if I'm going to go to a school and teach them some batucada, and we're going to put together a show, a 5 to 8 minute long show, they are going to move. They're going to learn how to do at least the basic hip movement. And again, I don't think you can separate it out. I mean, and in most of these cultures, they're not separated out, right? I mean, music, dance, drama, religion, food, it's all one big happy thing. And you can't just pull the music out to study it. It's a kind of a really bad idea, actually.
Exactly.
My first experience doing a State Department trip was to Bahrain, to the very small country of Bahrain. And I've been studying some Middle Eastern drumming, and so the first event they had me do was to do a workshop for, I guess these kids would probably be middle school to early high school age. So I'm showing up with my doumbek, and so I asked this kid, I said, well, play a maksum, and he starts to play it, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, so that's what it really sounds like. It was being in a place, like you're saying, eating the food, living the culture, hearing the sound of Arabic, and there was a Sufi person who had a recitation of the Quran. And somebody was telling me there that a lot of the traditional rhythms on the darbuka, the doumbek, come from the rhythmic meter in which the Quran is recited. So it brings an interesting point, like where does music-specific education intersect with the rest of the classes that they're getting in school? And what kind of respect is this multiculturalism gaining outside of the music class, and how does that impact the music?
Right. Well, we're getting close to the end of the show here, but in conclusion, guys, I just wanted to go back to something that I brought up earlier with regards to the tools that you need for teaching and Gon Bops, and just your feedback as far as how we can better promote the teaching of these styles and the instruments that are provided. Do you find your schools, I mean, this might be a rough question right now because of what we've dealt with in this past year with regards to budgets and all that, but the challenge of having the instruments to teach on, do you feel that your schools are equipped to a point where you're able to do what you need to do? I mean, is there something that you could, that would be more beneficial to you as far as moving forward and having the tools that you need?
And with regards as to what Gon Bops is applying, that's not necessarily the case. In terms of what the school can provide in terms of the resources to implement that is kind of a different question.
Sure.
I'm frankly very, very happy with the fact that Gon Bops is making some instruments that are affordable. I as I was saying before, the Mariano djembe. If I had like one djembe, my desert island drum, it would probably be that 10-inch drum, because it has elements of every other drum that I would use. Certainly, some of the other things that you were talking about, Rich, earlier, like bringing in some frame drums would be awesome. And to me, it would seem like any kind of jingle drums, especially with relationship with Sabian, seems like, like that's a very natural integration of the two companies. But yeah, I that would be my one suggestion is some of the, like some kind of and I should have said, because I wanted to say earlier, the 8-inch Pandiero, I'm using that a lot and playing my bastardized Canjera technique on it.
Yeah.
So I also really, really like these instruments that are kind of hybrid instruments. These instruments that are there's more than one way to approach them.
Yeah, I mean, we are slowly venturing into other worlds besides Afro-Cuban, obviously, because now we have the Brazilian instrument with the pandero, and the new kashishis that we just came out with from Brazil, and we're just slowly, and of course djembes. So we're slowly looking at different worlds and keeping in mind the authenticity of these worlds. So I'm hoping that we'll see more and more as we go here.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to chime in on that before we?
I think you hit on it with the word authenticity. Just the having examples of the masters of these instruments playing the traditional music. Great. Keep up the great work of interviewing folks like that and putting musical examples of that. I think having those examples to go to of that music is the biggest thing that we can get.
Well, before we end, is if any other further comments or anything you'd like to say. Other than that, everybody who's watching today, if you want to reach these gentlemen and ask them questions, they're obviously accessible via their pages, their Facebook pages, and you can always reach out to Gon Bops as well. And I'm happy to pass on anything you'd like to know from them. All four of these guys, want to thank them so much for their expertise over the years, and also now being part of this family, this great Gon Bops Educator family. We're going to be doing more and more together, and so I just hope that everybody just throws out conversation questions and stays in touch with them.
Yeah. One takeaway from me is I'm interested now in studying with Norm, Terry, and Roland, because I feel like there's
Likewise.
a lot I could learn from them.
Yeah, me as well. I mean, sure would be nice if we were all a little closer together physically. I had the great pleasure of being at Terry's school. I don't know, maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago now. I think Terry, when I went up there to visit, and I can't wait to go back up. I mean, Ashland, first of all, is just so fantastic, beautiful town, and he's got a great teaching facility up there. So I look forward to going back up there. And it's been a long time since I've been in Texas. I've played there often in the past, but it's been a while. And then in Washington, I haven't been there since I was a child. And my family, we're all talking about it now as far as a family trip, so I hope to be there someday, and I'll definitely look you up.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
Well, Rich, you're always welcome to come to Texas, and hopefully the weather will be accommodating. And I just want to say, speaking for myself, thank you very much for supporting the activities that we do, because it's to a lot of people this is a little left of center, what we do. And it's great to have such aggressive support. You guys, constantly developing new products and everything. And so that's why, I was just so thrilled when I saw the Gon Bops name come back to life after that down period, because I already owned a bunch of things, and I still have some. I'm currently restoring a pair of first generation bongos right now, and it was the first set of bongos I bought in Syracuse, of all places. When I was in college, and my brother and I were at a shopping mall. We saw them. We were in a music store, and I bought them there. And it's like, been in love with them ever since. But they've been gigged to death, and I had to restore them. So thank you for your support. More than anything, I feel like I'm very well personally equipped now, but always looking for
It
more.
looks like it.
I do a little bit of collecting, as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's I really appreciate Gon Bops, support and efforts to really keep this community really thriving, percussion wise. So thank you.
Great. And for us too, it's such an exciting and fun thing to be able to not only create new instruments and come up with ideas, and then it's the interaction with all of you and inspiring people that want to know more about the products. And that's what you guys do. You inspire people. You inspire people to not only learn how to play the instrument, but you inspire them about what you associate your name with as an endorsee, and that's the fun thing. I mean, we get to do this. We get to have fun playing our instrument, first of all, but then come up with ideas and go and make something,
It's pretty awesome, isn't it?
It's pretty great. It's pretty great, and the thing is, it just doesn't get old as we get on in life. It doesn't get old, it gets better. And I also found in my travels that the percussion family is very, very vast. No matter where you're from, no matter where what you study, what kind of style, we kind of are a tribal thing. We like to share and exchange, and and how did you do that? I want to show you how you did that, and that's the thing that we can inspire more and more of. I don't know how many other instrumentalist families sit around in a circle and jam like that. You know what I mean? We do have this very ancient, very cool tribal thing that
It's a community.
It crosses all borders, and it's a great thing. And so on behalf of the company, guys, we thank you for being a part of our family and helping us promote our instruments to so many future great players. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you.
And much more to come. Hang tight, guys. I'll be right back with you.
Cool.
That wraps up our show today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for your comments and questions. And we look forward to doing another one very soon. We'll be announcing the next show on all of our social media. So stay tuned. And again, reach out to us. Send us your questions, your requests, ideas. We're always open to hearing from you. So thank you very much. And thank you to our great guests today, Tom and Roland, Terry and Norm. And take care, everybody. We'll see you again soon.